Hello and welcome to our London History Podcast, where we share our love of London, its people, places and history. This podcast is designed for you to learn things about London that most Londoners don't even know, all in 20 minutes. I am your host, Hazel Baker, a qualified London tour guide and CEO of LondonGuidedWalks.co.uk. If you like what you hear, then please rate and review on Apple and Google Podcasts. Thank you to all of you who have left a review. It's really very much appreciated. I read every single one. You've wanted videos. You want podcasts to be longer and also for better quality transcripts. And in light of that, we have delivered just that. For more information on how to support the podcast, also access to recommended reading and related blog posts, then please go to londonguidedwalks.co.uk/podcast. Get that cup of tea, put your feet up, and enjoy. Today's episode, we are reaching the big 5-0. Can't quite believe how we got here, but thank you so much for all of your support. And that includes all your lovely comments on YouTube, on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, wherever you are, we are. And that includes Adam and Polly from Moscow, who reached out to say hey, and to share a little bit of the love of how words and history and all the rest of it flow together. And today we're going to be talking about the area of Shoreditch in the East End of London, and that forms part of the London Borough of Hackney. Nowadays, it's a creative hub with colourful street art, hip pubs and cafes, edgy galleries and popular nightclubs. And to be fair, I feel a little bit too old when I do go there. But it hasn't always been a haven for street artists, the man bun and smashed avocado junkies. So let's start at the very beginning. How did Shoreditch get its name? So this we don't have an absolute answer for. However, it is believed that Shoreditch got its name from water that ran across the area's marshland, and it was originally known as Sewers Ditch or Sewers Ditch. And that may come as a bit of surprise to many young professionals who are gobbling up these new high-rises in the area. Maybe it wouldn't sound so fabulous if they called it Sewers Ditch. I have heard from some people doing my Shoreditch street art tour that they believe the area was named after Jane Shore, who was mistress of Edward IV, and it's alleged that she was buried in a ditch in the area. But I can't find any evidence of that, especially given that Hackney Council suggests that the first mention of sewer ditch came in 1148, i.e. pre-Jane Shore's time. During Roman times, Shoreditch was known for being the source of the river Walbrook, and we cover this in episode 24, entitled The Walbrook in Roman London. And also it was famous for its well, Holywell or Holywell, and I've also seen writings of Hollywell. Even though the Walbrook River has now been covered over, you can still walk its source from Shoreditch all the way to the Thames by Cannon Street Station. Medieval Shoreditch was still mostly rural. The Domesday Book shows that Shoreditch had been part of the parish of Stepney before becoming its own parish after the building of the first version of St Leonard's Church in the 13th century, and for many years it was the main focal point of Shoreditch. Indeed, many of you may be not aware that St Leonard's Church is actually featured in the nursery rhyme Oranges and Lemons. So if you think of it, it says oranges and lemons say the bells of St Clement's. You owe me 5 farthings, say the bells of St Martin's. When will you pay me, say the bells of Old Bailey. When I grow rich, say the bells at Shoreditch. In 1158, Holywell Nunnery was founded just west of Shoreditch High Street. By the time of its demise in 1539, due to the dissolution of the monasteries, it had become the 9th wealthiest nunnery in the country. In total, the area was about 8 acres, with the church, as I said, founded in 1158, just south of where New Inn Yard is today. And the Museum of London's archaeological department, so MOLA, have done excavations there. You're able to buy the report for £22. And there they found a number of stone finds, one being an ancient stone cross to the north of Shoreditch High Street, and then also a wall on Curtain Road, which would have been the westernly boundary of the precinct. So Curtain Road on the west, Shoreditch High Street in the east, going all the way down to Holywell Lane. Yes, it still exists, and the south, and then at the very top, Bateman's Row is basically where the border would have been. So we're talking 8 acres. Corrody was very, very common in medieval England. Corrody is basically a lifetime allowance of food and clothing, and very often shelter and care as well, granted by the abbess or whichever religious house there. And one of the, I suppose, local celebrities, famous names who stayed at the nunnery was Sir Thomas Lovell. He's 1485 to 1524, and he was one of the most influential men in Henry VII's court, and he was even given the lifetime appointment as Chancellor of the Exchequer. And after his retirement, he lives within Holywell Nunnery here, and when he dies, of course, no surprise, he leaves a will. So not having any children, he hands his estate over to his sister, who's conveniently recently got married. And in the will, he leaves some money for the nuns as well. And this is what he says in the will. Immediately after my death, I desire and will my executors to cause my body and be brought and conveyed to the chapel in the nunnery aforesaid in honest manner, and not pompously, there to be buried. And that's the chapel that would have been just south of what is now New Inn Yard. No longer there, of course. But he continues. It will be desired by my executors of the priories of nuns at Holywell, so Halywell this time, that they all together, if disease and sickness let not, that a year after my burying, once in the day, every day in the foresaid year, come unto my tomb, where within their place I shall be buried, and together say, De profundis for my soul. And they be agreed, I will my executors give unto them immediately £10. He also dedicates an amount of money for prayers to be said to Henry VII as well. And, this is absolutely common for medieval times, but it's nice to have the mention of Holywell or Holywell in this mix. There is a bronze relief medallion of Thomas Lovell in the Westminster Abbey collection. And also in the National Portrait Gallery, there is a plaster cast of relief. And it's a 20th century version, but it's believed to be based on a work of about 1518. And it's really quite exquisite. And it has so many beautiful Tudor roses. And of course, Henry VII is the first of the Tudors, and iconography was really important for him. So I will put a link in the show notes for you to see both of those. Sir Thomas Lovell also makes an appearance in Shakespeare's and John Fletcher's Henry VIII. It was a script called All Is True, which was a historical thriller, and that was based on the divorce of Henry VIII and Catherine of Aragon. And of course, now we know it as Henry VIII. And the character of Sir Thomas Lovell is minus one, but he's present at Buckingham's trial and execution, and also at the festivities at Wolsey's palace. Later on in the play, Lovell is accosted by Bishop Gardiner while he's on his way to inform the king that Queen Anne is in labour, but may not survive the birthing process. Gardiner, in return, claims that he wishes the child well, but hopes Anne perishes. He also condemns two of the king's primary advisers, Thomas Cromwell and Thomas Cranmer. In reality, Lovell, as you know, died in 1524. That's 9 years before Anne Boleyn gives birth to Princess Elizabeth, and most certainly before either Cromwell or Cranmer come to anything close to a place of power. Why Shakespeare chooses to use a dead man for this situation, I don't know, but it works for this episode. There was a performance of Henry VIII on the 29th of June 1613, and some of you will know exactly where I'm going here. So at the end of Act 1, to mark the entrance of King Henry for a masque scene at Cardinal Wolsey's residence, barely anyone in the crowd notices a piece of flaming material that was from one of the cannons, and that had landed in the Globe Theatre's thatched roof. And within minutes, the fire had run around the inside of the roof, and it set people on fire. There's a story of how a man had his clothes set on fire and had to throw a bottle of ale all over himself. And for the most famous theatre in England, that was it, the end. However, the beginning of the Globe doesn't start in Southwark. Yep, you've guessed it. It starts in Shoreditch. Now, you may remember in episode 46, Beer, the Bard and Historic Buildings of Bankside, with tour guide Stephen King, where he mentions William Shakespeare and his theatrical company of men who moved their theatre across the Thames to Southwark, close to where the Globe Theatre is now. Well, London's first two theatres were built in Shoreditch. The first theatre was built in 1576 and was called, quite ingeniously, the Theatre. Not only was this London's first ever permanent playhouse, it was also Britain's. The benefit of Shoreditch, much like Southwark, was that it was just outside the walls of the City of London. Even though plays were highly censored, the Mayor of London had banned plays from being performed within the city walls. But he couldn't ban them out of it. Before specific theatre buildings were built, travelling troupes of actors were performing inside the square courtyards of taverns and inns across the country. The theatre was a polygonal building open to the elements, just like the Globe Theatre, and was demolished in 1598 under the terms of its lease. The second theatre in Shoreditch was called the Curtain Theatre, which is on the site of where Hewitt Street is now, and of course we also have Curtain Road. The Curtain Theatre was only opened a year after the first theatre, and it was only like 180 metres south, about 200 yards, of the first theatre, the Theatre, which had opened a year previously. And why was it called the Curtain Theatre? Because it was located near a plot of land called Curtain Close, and that got its name from its proximity to the walls of Holywell Priory, a curtain wall being a section of wall between two bastions. The difference with the Curtain Theatre compared to the theatre was that it was rectangular, not round, and it had about a 14-metre stage that's about 46 feet. And this was all found in an excavation that happened there by the Museum of London again, so the molar, from 2012 to 2016-ish. And I'm looking forward to the museum and opening up there. And there's a very nice statue of Shakespeare in the ground floor window at the moment. There have been a few finds as well, including a ceramic money box, which would have been there for collecting entry fees, a ceramic bird whistle, so maybe that was a prop, and also some beads, we're assuming for decorating stage costumes, and also a small statue of Bacchus, which is the god of winemaking. But Shoreditch's Shakespearean connections continue. I present to you Richard Tarleton. Richard Tarleton was the most famous clown of the Elizabethan age. He had a gift of pleasing the groundlings of the Curtain Theatre, Shoreditch, and royalty alike. He was Queen Elizabeth I's favourite clown and became her court jester and groom of the Queen's chamber. In this role, he told the Queen more of her faults than most of her chaplains and cured her melancholy better than all of her physicians. We're not quite sure when he was born, but he died on the 3rd of September 1588. He wrote his will, died and was buried all on the same day, which has led some people to think that he was a victim of plague. Of course, if we don't know when he was born, then we don't know how old he was, but we do know he was married, had at least one son, and was survived by his mother. And this is all in the records of, you guessed it, Holywell Nunnery. Tarleton was so famous that it has been suggested that Hamlet's "Alas, poor Yorick" speech was written in memory of him. And Hamlet could have been performed as early as 1600, which is 12 years after Tarleton's death, and could have been also one of the plays used to open the company's brand new Globe Theatre. Looking at the time, I am kind of thinking that maybe we'll have to do a part 2 of this, because I haven't talked about the history of Shoreditch for the recent 400 years. However, if you want to be bang up to date with Shoreditch, then why not come on one of my street art in Shoreditch tours? So we have a virtual tour on Monday the 26th of April at 7 p.m. It's an hour-long virtual tour where I have gone out and I have filmed these streets of Shoreditch with some of the fantastic street art that it has to offer. And then I do a live commentary on what we are seeing, looking about the art and also the artists. And you also get to see Ben Ine in action. It's all good stuff. And that is all in London time. If you're unable to attend live, maybe you're listening to this a little bit later after that date, we record the event and then we edit it a little bit to present it to you so you can watch it in the comfort of your own home at a time you choose. But if you're in London and you want to see the streets for real, then come along to one of my street art in Shoreditch tours. I do guided walks where you can buy a ticket and join a group, or you can book me for a private tour and have me all to yourself. All the information is on our website, londonguidedwalks.co.uk, and I hope, in whichever capacity, to see you very soon.